It's story time.
Apparitions with Matt Bruce.
So it's funny. I was just talking about this the other day. My first experience with the paranormal. Um, my parents were out at a church gathering, some kind of event, and my brother was taking care of me. Now, my brother's 14 years older than I am. I was about 6 years old at the time, and he was playing this game where I was sitting on the bed, and he was shuffling on his hands and knees around the bed on the floor. And the lights were off, so it's totally dark. I can't see anything. And then he'd go up and grab my leg, and it would scare the hell out of me. I'd scream, ah! And then he'd shuffle on over to the other side of the bed and grab me again, and I'd scream, and I hated it. Scared me to death. And the darkness, being a kid, I mean, it's all these elements, my older brother picking on me. Now, I want you to picture something too. In this room, we have the bed, the foot of the bed. Just beyond the foot of the bed is the doorway to the bathroom. My brother's in the bathroom, looking at the mirror, combing his hair, laughing. And I grabbed this framed picture of the composer Brahms. I still have it because of this moment. I grabbed it off the wall to throw at him because I was so angry. And as I reared back to throw this picture at him, a face appeared between me and him. It was terrifying. This face appeared, it looked like a skull, and it just went, and then it was gone. And I froze, as one would do, right? And I froze, and my brother looked at me and he said, "What were you doing?" And I said, "Nothing," and I just set it down. And I kept that private for a long time. And that, I would say, is probably the pivotal moment for me. And who knows, if it felt very evil and malevolent at first. I was terrified of this thing, but also it was looking out for my brother. In a sense, it was kind of a guardian of, in some degree, to some degree. Years later, I was 9 years old, and we were operating kind of a dormitory situation for a Lutheran high school in the area that was connected to our church. And I told my brother, and he told me, never tell anybody about that ever again. Because he had been doing his own experiments, his own work, his own, I don't know, work with the Ouija board, his own kind of contacting the other side. He's a goth kid from the 80s, you know what I mean? And he didn't want me to say anything to my parents for the same reasons I mentioned earlier. Didn't want them to think I was crazy, didn't want them to think I was into some dark stuff. And perhaps he was into some dark stuff, and then he was worried that it was bleeding over into my life somehow. I have no idea, but we never spoke about it again, and I didn't tell anybody about it until I was an adult. I mean, we look at biblical interpretations of angels, for instance. They're terrifying. All these eyes, you know what I mean? But I don't know. I never got the answer. And I kind of like that mystery. You know, was it protecting him? Was it saving him for something more nefarious? I have no idea. But in that moment, it protected him. And in that moment, whatever it was scared me enough to stop me in my tracks. I fancied myself a little ghost hunter after that, and I was chasing those experiences. I mentioned earlier that I'm from Salt Lake City. I am from Utah. It's where I spent most of my life, but I did grow up here as a child in Southern California. We were very poor, and here in Southern California, we were living in the hotels that kind of surround Disneyland, and we were like one step away from homelessness. My mom worked at a department store at South Coast Plaza, and she was the only one supporting us. And so we didn't live in like a house. We didn't have an apartment. We just had a hotel room with 2 beds, and we went to different hotel rooms. We lived in different hotels. And so these residential hotels had other families that were also in similar financial states. And the communities that you have there were really strong. All the families, all the kids would play together all the time, and it really was a great environment socially. We were at a place called Costa Mesa Motor Inn, which actually got a lot of news the last few years because they were demolishing it and people were still living there. It was a huge ordeal with tenant rights and everything. This is in Costa Mesa, and we were living in room 601. And just down the way on the second floor, we were on the second floor, just a few doors down, was room 606. And there was this rumor that it was haunted. Nobody ever stayed there. It was never rented out. And there was one time, there was a kid, Todd. So Todd and his mom would live there for a few months and move out, live there for a few months and move out. There was a transient nature to the people that would like come in and out. It was kind of nomadic people or people that would fall on hard times. And Todd and his mom lived in room 607. I swear I saw him go into room 606. So I knocked on room 606. And then the curtain opens and a woman bathed in blue light and wearing a muumuu, her hair in curlers, wearing old style glasses, peels back the curtain. And I knew it wasn't his mom. And I say, "Is Todd there?" I was probably 10 years old. "Is Todd there?" And she went, "No." And I just got goosebumps. And I just stared at her and she closed the curtain. And I went to room 607. I knocked on the door and then his mom answered, "Is Todd here?" "Yeah, Todd's here." And I was like, "Come on, Todd." And we went down to the front desk and we asked them, "Is anybody in room 606?" And they said, "No, we don't rent that room out." That was the first apparition, full apparition, like person, the blue light. It was like a movie. It was, I got goosebumps because I wasn't expecting to see somebody. But honestly, if it were any other situation, you would believe it was a real person. It was really fascinating. So me and my friends would like do all these little things. We'd like try to look in the window. We would hear noises from there at all times of the day and night. We'd hear phone ringing, even though there was no phone hooked up in there. And they had used it as a sort of like storage room. We learned later it wasn't just an empty room, but you know, I don't know what lore surrounded it. I think kids were making things up, but I do know that we heard strange things coming from that room. I do know that I saw that woman, and yeah, it's a shakeup. It is really, really cool. It feels deeply mysterious and very magical. And I feel like in this world where everything is boiled down to the things that we can look at online or going to an ATM machine and not dealing with a human being, we're deprived of so many of these experiences and these connections with others here, across the plane, wherever. So, yeah, I guess I've never wondered why I was chosen to see that spirit. But I do know that I have done many, many paranormal investigations and saw nothing. Was it some kind of force conspiring to set me on a path when I was younger? Perhaps. You know, maybe it's something to do with me and my own, you know, physical chemistry, the way my mind works, everything. But it's cool. I like the mystery. I kind of don't want to know. I kind of want to just exist in it, you know? So I do some haunted tours, like true crime tours, things like that. I would take people on these little excursions. I was part of a paranormal research group in Utah for several years. And we would revisit the same places over and over again just to see what we would get. And there was a very active, strange, spooky place called the Children's Hospital in Salt Lake City. And if you were to take 500 East, 5th East, all the way up from downtown into the avenues, which was this kind of residential area full of Victorian houses and you know, lots of families and stuff, there's this huge brick building that looks terrifying. It looks like something out of a movie. It's on a massive hill. It's a huge building with this like drop off in front of it and these like blowing grasses that were way too long, massive iron fence. And it was a children's hospital. It had been shut down for a long time and it was gutted, completely gutted. And we would drive up there and we would try to see it. And there were times where we'd hop the fence and get chased out by dogs or by security and cops would show up and we'd take off. One time we went there and you could go up behind the children's hospital and you could see through the building all the way to the downtown area and see all the lights of the city because the whole place was empty and the windows in the back lined up with the windows at the front and you could just see through the whole thing. So we're at the back and we're looking and me and some friends were visiting from out of town and we're deciding whether or not we want to hop the fence and go in. My friends were really spooked, right? So we are contemplating and then have you ever played Shadow Man? that game? You may have played it. Maybe it's just what we called it in Utah. But Shadow Man is this idea of where you just stare into the darkness and you just let the darkness form things and you just try to accept what it is. And so you could see, I remember we would play this in the back of my friends' trucks. Like if we're in rural Utah and we're driving around, it's the middle of the night, and then it would look like there's somebody chasing the truck. Your mind would create these images in the darkness, and it can be very, very terrifying. And it could explain a lot of what people claim to see when it comes to supernatural, paranormal things. But so amid the darkness, I see the silhouette of a young girl walking past the windows. And it doesn't come from the side of the building. She comes from like one of the windows right in the middle of the building, and she walks across 3 window frames and then disappears. And I was worried I was playing Shadow Man in that instant. And I said, do you guys see this? Do you guys see this? And everybody saw this little girl walking. And we were just shocked and scared. And then we heard a blood-curdling scream. And then we knew we were being like messed with. We were like, there's got to be people in there. There's got to be people in there. And so the people I was with, they were from Kentucky. They had these Southern accents, and they could really sound like someone's parents if they wanted to, you know? So they're like, we're calling the cops. You kids better get out of there. They're on their way, blah, 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 right? And we see these kids run out, these like teenagers. They're tall. They're like, adult size. They're running out, and they come out, and we were like, we're just kidding. We're not really going to call the cops on you. You guys just like scared the hell out of us. And they were like, yeah, but you guys really scared us with that scream. And there was nobody else in there. They ended up hanging out with us for the rest of the night while we went to the Salt Lake City Cemetery and checked out some spots. But I do believe them when they say that there was like nobody else in the building with them. They were the only ones. There was no way they could have been the little girl because they were just too tall, knowing like the size of the windows and everything. Charles Fort, he was an author where we get a lot of what we know as the paranormal, what we know as the supernatural. We get a lot of it from him. He's actually the man who coined the term teleportation. Okay. And he has this whole idea, nothing is supernatural. It's all just natural. We just attach super to it because it's beyond our understanding. But this stuff has existed for a very long time, and exists alongside us. And just because we're scared of it, we add super to it. But no, it's all part of the natural world that we've always been a part of, and it's always been a part of it. I'm a firm believer in nothing's going to happen to us if we don't allow it the opportunity. If we remain closed off and we just go to the gym and we go to work and we go to bed and we go to the gym and we go to work and we go to bed, we're not allowing space for anything else to come in. But when we start throwing ourselves into some, I think David Bowie talked about it being, just a little bit outside of your depth, like you're getting to the edge of the pool where your feet don't quite touch the bottom. Then the real exciting things start to happen. And I think that applies to these kind of experiences as well.
Thanks for joining me today. And did you know that I offer bone and tarot readings? You can schedule a session at storieswithsapphire.com. Salamat and good night.